All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Friends Occasionally Not Disagreeing. I'm Justin. I'll let the others go and we'll talk about the subject in a second.
I'm Cody.
I'm Dave.
I'm Joe.
Okay, and we are here to talk about the first episode of Disney Plus's Moon Knight. I'm hosting tonight because I get the impression I'm the one who knows the most about the character out of the four of us. So I guess I'll launch into a bit of my exposure. So I've read a bunch of the runs in the comics over the years, and there have been a lot of different interpretations of Moon Knight in that time. There are some where he's just kind of it's questionable whether he has any sort of powers and he just has multiple personalities. There's some where he thinks he's other superheroes. There's some where his strength actually waxes and wanes with the cycles of the moon. So there's been a lot of different approaches to try and figure out something that works for this character. Some are more effective than others, I think. And I guess as we talk about the episode, we'll see what we think about this particular approach Disney's taking. I'll turn it over to whoever wants to go next, I guess.
Yeah, this is Dave. I'll just say that even though I'm a big Marvel fan and MCU fan, I'm much more a movie fan than a comic fan. So I had not really encountered this character before, heard good things, but knew absolutely nothing about the character going in. So that was kind of an interesting experience because I didn't know if it's a multiple personalities thing, if it's like a possession thing, if it's some kind of crazy alternate reality thing. I didn't know. So I'll be curious to know what the lore is and what they might be pulling from that for this series.
Okay. Next.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, similar to Dave, I really did not have any familiarity with this character before the series. I mean, really, I am a big Oscar Isaac fan. I think he's a great actor. So
Fantastic. Yeah.
I was really excited once I heard he was involved with this. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I knew about this show going into it. I mean, I read some vague things comparing Moon Knight to being like Marvel's Batman, but I don't really have much insight based on the comics or anything. But yeah, I'm really just kind of interested to see where this goes.
Yeah, and this is Cody again. Most of my Marvel knowledge honestly comes from like the 90s and collecting the cards and some comic books at the time as well. Character I had definitely heard of. I have a lead figurine of this one down in my collection as well. And similar to what Joe just said, my impression has always been that he's like a Batman-like detective style figure mixed with some Egyptian mythology perhaps in there somehow. This is my correct in the comics, his name is Mark Spector, the real name.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yes.
is also another interesting thing because DC then also has a character called Spectre, which is like we could have an episode on all these weird DC Marvel both have the same character name. It's kind of, yeah, exactly, kind of bizarre, but yeah, that's really all I really know about it, other than like kind of like bizarre white-ish costume and the creepy eyes, I guess. So
in a way, I'm kind of glad things have worked out this way because it'll be interesting seeing what people who aren't familiar at all with the character had to think of this. Because I know, as someone who has exposure to Moon Knight, in the comics, my impressions are going to be probably very different from those of all of you, and most likely the average viewer at home. So yeah, I look forward to seeing, as we talk about the episode, what your impressions actually are. So I guess before we begin, do we want to ask did you want to ask me any questions about the character, or do we just kind of want to go in blind and answer them as they go?
I say let's just jump into it. What
Okay.
do you guys think?
Okay.
Actually, I do have one question to start.
Sure.
Is Steven an alternate to Mark, or is Mark an alternate to Steven? Because this episode was completely from Steven's point of view, except for the last 5 seconds.
It really kind of depends on the run. Like in some of the comics, he's got, other personalities that still show up. In general, the base personality of the character is Mark Spector.
Okay.
Disney might be doing a different take on it,
Sure.
but the general canon is that Mark is the primary person.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can maybe speculate on how Disney's approaching that once we get a little later into the episode. Like there's one thing in particular that I think kind of gives a hint to the answer to that, but we'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
All right. So I guess if we're doing this kind of as a scene by scene kind of play by play, we might as well kick things off with the opening. So I don't know if someone wanted to take the reins or.
Well, I think maybe we should say too, because so far we've mostly done reviews on this show on the podcast. And since this is more or less, I mean, it is a review, but it's more or less our take on the first episode of something that's not completed, as opposed to like a retrospective look on something that we've finished at this point. So I think that's worth mentioning to the listeners as well, that this is like initial impressions of the series, as opposed to, deciding how well Disney did wrapping up this character's story or whatever's going to play out in this. I'm not really sure. We'll talk about that, but that is a different way to look at things. Like I was mentioning before the podcast, that I have just a ton of questions on this because it's the first episode, as opposed to like answers of how they resolved all these things. So
yeah, that is a good point. I think we talked about, once the series is over, coming back and doing a review episode of all the episodes together. But yeah, I think for now we're just kind of exploring this and discussing the questions that it raises.
Yeah, and I think once the run is over, coming back and touching base again would be a worthwhile idea. Okay, so beginning with the impressions again, hammering that home. Impressions of the first episode. So it actually starts with the villain of, or the seeming villain of the series, and it's a scene that made me kind of squirm a little bit. It certainly made my wife squirm when she saw the crushing of the glass and all that, and then putting it in his shoes. So I guess, do we want to start talking a little bit about the villain as we've seen him so far?
I thought that this was just like an incredible villain intro. Like he doesn't say a word and you don't see his face, but you immediately know that like this guy means business, is very serious. Like you think about the phrase like he walks the walk, like they literally show that.
Very painful walk.
So that later when you see him, not only do you understand already like his convictions and how real he believes in all this stuff, how strongly he believes in all of it, but also like when in later scenes, like if you listen, like you can hear the glass as he's walking still, and it's just an incredible reminder of like this guy's a badass.
I didn't catch that part. Okay.
I thought it was kind of chilling. Like I honestly, I've watched this episode in full twice, and I actually went through again a third time, just kind of like scrolled through and jotted out some notes. But the first time I watched it, I was just kind of taken aback. Like my immediate thought was, I can't believe this is the opening scene of a Disney Marvel show.
Yeah.
It just feels so kind of dark. And I mean, just to briefly describe, we see he sits down, he's sitting at a table, he pours a glass of water, drinks it, then smashes the glass, puts the broken glass into his like sandals, and then puts them on, and we see him like walking away. It's this act of like self-flagellation. And I mean, as Dave said, right away you see how sort of like convicted he is. He's dedicated to something right from the start.
Yeah.
But I mean, the imagery is just kind of like haunting.
Yeah, I agree. It did seem like a very surprising start to a Disney show. You don't generally think of someone, mutilating themselves, even if it's not directly on camera, as being a part of a Disney narrative. And it did set the tone for this villain. And even once he was in, a bit later on, he's in front of all those people, and it just, the more he develops, the more he feels like he is I mean, we've all seen like street preachers and like the people who kind of go through and try to just stand on their soapbox and yell things at people and whatnot. This guy came across as in a way a more subdued and yet more chilling version of that, and he felt real as much as someone with his abilities can feel real, and I thought that was very well done.
Actually, I heard somewhere that this was actually Ethan Hawke's idea, the whole broken glass thing. Apparently he is he said I guess he's like fascinated by the idea of the self-flagellation that you see, like a lot of there are references to like a lot of saints and people, like that doing these sorts of things, which I mean, I think that which ties into what you were saying about like the street preacher thing, Justin, like it feels immediately like this character sees himself as some sort of righteous person. He at least based on this first episode, he seems like he firmly believes what he's doing is right. And, he is totally dedicated to it.
You think Ethan Hawke was just doing that between the scenes and they were like, hey, do you mind if we just
maybe
put that in there?
Maybe. Do you have any thoughts on the scene, Cody?
No, I mean, you guys covered it pretty well. It's just interesting. You didn't know who it was at first. And no, I mean, I'll come back. I'll have a little more to say about this guy when we get a couple scenes ahead here, I think.
Okay.
Cool. His feet were in remarkably good condition for somebody who maybe does this from time to time. Like,
yeah.
But maybe this was the first time for him. I don't know.
Well, it's either, without spoiling too much, it's either the protection he's getting from the entity that he is connected to, or he's done it long enough, he's built up calluses, or he knows a way of walking that it's kind of like walking across fields of broken glass where he knows how to do it without cutting himself. So there's possible explanations. So, but okay, so from that scene, we then move on to our first introduction to our hero, and not quite as disturbing, but it's definitely as distinctive, I would say.
This is a wacky scene.
It's our old mate Stevie, it is.
No, it's Steven with a V.
With a V.
It's our old mate Steven, it is.
But yeah, so for those at home who either haven't seen it or may need a refresher, so we're introduced to Steven / Mark / Moon Knight in his bed, who has restrained himself in various ways to keep him from leaving his bed. He's got like an ankle strap on, it's like Velcroed shut. His floor around his bed has like a ring of sand around it, so he can see if he's stepped through it. There's tape on his door to see if he's opened it. He's got all these things to like ensure that he hasn't done anything during his sleep, and it's such a weird yet effective introduction that I mean, I know what it's all about since I am familiar with the character. I'm kind of curious what your initial impressions were of seeing all this. Like, what was going through your head when you saw all this stuff?
The first time, or this is
well, like when you first saw it, when you first sat down to watch the episode.
Well, so yeah, I don't know. When the first time we see it, yeah, definitely. Like, it seems like he's trying to restrain himself there in some way, shape, or form. I have some problems with this we'll get into shortly here, but yep. And it's just, again, it's really interesting visual, like with the sand around the bed and the purposely stepping on his tile around the immediate bed without stepping on the sand, and then the deliberate step into the sand as he walks over it, and the piece of tape on the door. I'm going to come back to that later as well, but what the fuck? All right, anyway. Yeah, I dropped the first F-bomb. There we are.
I mean, I had no idea what was going on at this point. I mean, like you said, Justin, it's a very intriguing image. And I mean, definitely an interesting introduction to this character. But can we talk about his phone call, which starts during this scene, or do we want to save that for a second?
I'm up for talking about it if you guys are.
Well, that's where I kind of got a sense of what was going on. Is he makes this phone call ostensibly to his mom, and he's leaving a voicemail. And he mentions that he woke up like once again feeling like he got hit by a bus. So that was my first sense of like, oh, something's been happening to him at night. And like, that's the reason that he's trying to restrain himself like this. But I mean, it definitely introduces a mystery right off the bat. You know, you don't know exactly what he's been doing or what's been happening to him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it is in terms of like a hook, at least. I think the series, the episode starts off with two good ones. I mean, creepy villain, and then what the heck is going on with this guy who's our protagonist? So I think it does kind of set the tone, the standard that this isn't going to be your average, you know, Marvel show. It's not going to be your
Right.
average superhero thing.
Yeah.
And depending on, you know, whether or not audiences are receptive to that, you know, it could be very good, or it could put people off. What about let's see, so we've heard from you two. Dave, what did you think about this?
Yeah, basically the same thing the other guy said, although I'm a little like, what's actually stopping him from going out at night? Like,
Nothing's the answer.
Yeah,
he
gonna
can
guess
just
that's
wake up,
Cody's
he can just
problem.
take the leg things off, he can jump over the sand, and then he'll jump back onto the bed at the end and like just take some blue tape off. And then it shows how he has like later he has like a giant bin full of blue tape balls. So
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
like I
mean, for
didn't
me, it
really
wasn't-
get what was so like foolproof about this.
For me, it wasn't even, I mean, I didn't really necessarily, well, I guess the ankle restraint, for me, it was like not even necessarily so much about like something stopping him from getting out. It's the fact that like there's no sign that he like ever left. Like the sand, you know, everything is perfectly in place.
Mhm.
I don't know.
I guess
it's
if it was
silly.
just a standard like sleepwalk or something, then yeah, maybe
Yeah.
he would like walk through the sand and then the next day there would be steps. But it just seemed like they could have come up with something that would really be like unavoidable.
Yeah,
like,
no, I
really,
agree with
really
that.
truly
Yeah.
trapping him. I don't know.
Well, but he consider also that he's just in this mindset, in this personality, at least, he's just a normal guy who doesn't know what's going on. He might not be thinking through all the, you know, the various things that someone from the outside like us would think of, like, oh, if he just like locked the door and, you know, hid the keys somewhere, you know, or whatever, you know, he might just be doing the best he can, even if it's not that effective. Because let's be
That's
honest,
true.
Steven doesn't really seem like he's got it all together.
He's just a simple British bloke trying to look after his one fin fish.
Yeah, my first impression of this character was like that they made him like too lame. Like he like 2 seconds later he steps out of his apartment, there's somebody like selling brooms in front of his door or something, and
Yep.
he's like, that's okay, I'm okay with it, or something. Like, I'm not even gonna try the accent that Joe is pulling off. And
Come on, Bonnie.
I'm just poking fun. We'll get to that later.
I was like, they could make him sympathetic without being a total pushover, or I guess that's what they were going for. I thought they shot a little too far in one direction, in my opinion.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, my guess is that was intentional, that they're probably setting him up to be an extreme in opposition to the other version that we'll meet later. Like, he is very kind of just gentle and like, I don't know.
I just think if they had toned it down a little bit, make him a little more normal, it would have made him more sympathetic for me
That's fair.
later when he's going through all this shit and has no idea what's going on.
Yeah,
that's fair. Yeah, because you can have a character without it being a caricature. And
That's
yeah,
true.
That's
I
a
do
good way
kind
of
of
putting it.
agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Maybe give him a slightly better accent than Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins.
That was my closest comparison as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard worse accents, but yeah, it could have been better. But you know, it also might be intentional. You know,
it is.
Yeah.
I read Oscar Isaac said that it is very much intentional.
Okay.
So
In what way is it intentional? Like,
well, I mean, I don't, this might get into like spoiler country, but I think it's just the fact that, you know, Mark is very much not British. And it's just like, it's like a manifestation of like a weird stereotype of British people or
Oh.
something. Like,
Interesting. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, he's trying his well, it's also gets kind of into spoilery territory, but this version of him is trying his best to fit in and to be normal, that he's got this exaggerated picture of what normal is. I think that's kind of what that is building off of, and we'll see as the series goes on. But that also might play into the whole caricature thing, where this is his best shot at trying to live a normal life, even if he's really not sure how that works. So
Okay.
at least that's where I think they're going with it, but we'll see. Okay, so he he gets out of his apartment, goes out on the town, and I think the next scene is he heads to his job then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything we wanted to really say immediately about that? I've got a couple of things, but
I just had questions again. It's just all questions here. So what am I like overanalyzing this, or like why did the girl ask if he was dead?
Yeah. I don't
that
think
was
you're
weird.
overanalyzing.
Well, I mean,
that.
taking a step back from that. I mean, right? He
we
goes
should
into the
probably-
museum and is talking to this girl, and I mean, it shows right off the bat that he has a pretty deep knowledge of like Egyptian history. Like, I think that's kind of important to establish. He, talks a little bit about the pyramid, and then tells her about the mummification process.
which he gets wrong, by the
Right
way.
out the nozzle.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
They don't pull organs out the nozzle.
No.
Sorry,
He's never
but-
even pulled a bowstring before.
but then the girl asked, how do you know that did it hurt?
when you got kicked out of the
when-
field of
when-
reeds.
yeah.
I think we should also say, because we skipped ahead a little bit, he does work at the museum, so
Yes,
he
that's fair.
seems to have aspirations of being like a curator or a tour guide, but he really just kind of sells merch at the gift shop.
I thought at first that the woman was berating him for not working at the museum at all, just like showing up every day.
Yeah.
So it's not quite that bad.
Yeah. Regarding the girl, I don't think she is what she seems to be, because I honestly think she's something else that will probably come into play later. But yeah, her asking of that question, it gets into a little bit of spoilery territory based on exactly what the character of Moon Knight is. So I'm not really going to go too much into depth on that unless you really want me to.
I'll just say she was not a good actress, so I hope we don't see a ton of her in the future.
Fair. But so yeah, I do think she'll be important. Hopefully she'll be a little better next time she shows up, if she shows up again. But right now, I think that was just kind of something that it was a blink and you miss it kind of minor plot point.
I actually turned on
okay.
subtitles at that point because I was like, what'd she just say?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if I want you to say what you think she is, Justin, but I will say that you saying that has me even more intrigued to see where things are going.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Then
All right, in that case-
I also asked the question here. He made the comment on the poster missing the two gods. I don't know
Well,
if that
before
is
before
directly
that,
tied to that also importance of the plot or not.
before
maybe?
that, he learns that he has a date that he didn't know about
Oh yes.
at a steak restaurant, and we learn that Stephen is vegan, so it's weird that he would want to go there.
So this
I mean-
woman who ostensibly Mark set a date with her, like she didn't notice a huge shift in his accent, much less
That's a good point.
personality and whole demeanor like that.
Well, the weird, I didn't even really think that through. But the other thing is, he has ostensibly worked there for a while as Stephen. So did he just like go up to her with an American accent and be like, "Hey, baby, would you like to get some steak?" Like she didn't think that was weird.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah. So is Mark going to the museum and just like working the day shift every once in a while? Or I don't know how this works either.
Yeah, and this kind of gets into one of the occasional stumbling blocks with the character, because in most of the runs, the writers do have to juggle all of these different personalities, and sometimes things like this crop up where it might seem fine at the time, where it's like, okay, this is a workable story, but then you scrutinize it, and little inconsistencies like this pop up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's just the writer is trying to kind of throw something in there to, increase the mystery a little bit.
Yeah, episode 8.
But then we do get Cody, you mentioned after that we see kind of behind the scenes him and his supervisor are working on some inventory stuff, and he does point out the issue with the poster that it only has 7 out of the 9 gods of the Egyptian Ennead on it. I'm just curious, what did you guys make of that?
I'm pretty sure I know one of the gods that's missing.
I wasn't sure if it was just supposed to like show his expertise on the subject, or if it was like the 2 that were left off are going to end up being like the force behind the villain, or maybe he's related to the other one that's missing or something like that. I wasn't sure.
I feel like they could have made it a more egregious error on the banner than just not including, like, what if there just wasn't room? So they picked the 7 most famous, or if they had misspelled something or put the wrong name next to the wrong image, that would have been a better thing for him to catch, in my opinion.
Well, again, this the reason behind it that I'm pretty sure is the reason behind it gets into spoilers about the character, and I don't want to do that if you guys don't want things potentially spoiled, and if the listeners especially don't want things spoiled.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I will say I'm 100% certain that the gods that are missing are going to be important to the story.
That's kind of how I took it. I kind of assumed that, that was, I mean, it is a way to kind of show off his knowledge a little bit more, but I did take it as, the ones that are missing are going to play a role in this.
I do kind of wish we'd gotten a better shot of the poster, so we could actually pick out the names that are there and the ones that that aren't, and then in the background you could like look it up on Wikipedia or whatever and see like which ones aren't there and read a bit into that. But I don't think we ever really get a clear shot of the whole poster, which feels like a missed opportunity to me.
It's interesting too, because I feel like we've already discussed 2 or 3 things just in the early part of this podcast episode where like we as hardcore Marvel and TV scrutinizers are like, well, here's this thing that's going to come up later on, where like I don't know that the average Marvel viewer is doing that.
Oh,
fair.
No, I would say probably not.
I mean, I know the internet and
personally,
social media and whatnot. They do have a tendency to kind of go over these things with a fine-tooth comb, but I think most viewers, if they're aware of that at all, are going to just kind of come to things like us or other analyses rather than doing the legwork themselves. I do worry though that if the producers make things too obscure, that people aren't going to stick around to find those answers. So it's a little bit of a tightrope walk to try and make things interesting without being too obtuse. And we'll see how that plays out as the series goes on. But
that's a good point. I mean, I think there's definitely enough here to probably keep, the general public's interest. But it is interesting. I mean, I haven't looked at the internet too in depth, but I'm sure there's like a Moon Knight subreddit that is just poring over frame by frame, looking for all the little hints.
Just make sure you spell the one with the K. The other one's different Reddit. So
just pictures of butts.
So many butts.
Does it go back home then? As I'm trying to like, there's a gap.
He talks to the living statue first.
Oh yeah,
on the bench.
Yeah, he leaves work and there's like a living statue dude outside, and it seems like he has a one-sided relationship with this statue. You get the sense that he talks to the guy often.
I really wanted like one word from the guy, something to indicate whether he enjoys the company or like absolutely despises him. Like the fact that this guy's 2 best friends seem to be his mother, who he just leaves voicemails for, and this statue who also does not respond to him is like,
and Gus.
I think you're overlooking
Gus. So he's got 3 best friends who do not speak back to him when he speaks to them. Again, they took it too far in my opinion, but I don't know. Hopefully it'd be cool if statue guy turns out to be something.
I hope he has something to do in this. Like, I agree. I was waiting for him to at least say like one line or something. I do hope that he comes back in the future and has at least something to do. But I mean, I'm trying. I don't think we get any like major revelations in his talking to the statue. He kind of just talks about restraining it, like his sleep issues, and the fact that if he wants to have a girlfriend, he's gonna have to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I can't have ankle restraints on my bed, can I? Which
That depends on what she's into.
Yeah, that was my thought. Like,
all right, I'm gonna make a 1,000,000-to-1 prediction here. In Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there was that race of gold-skinned people.
yes.
I think he's one of them. It's not makeup.
Oh my god!
He's one of them. I'm going with that. And
that's how they tie it in.
That's my 1,000,000-to-1 crossover.
That'd be hilarious.
He vaguely reminded me of Ozzy Osbourne, which was weird.
Golden Ozzy. Yeah.
The only article I read about this show earlier today said that in the credits they found the statue man is apparently named a minor character from the comic books, I guess. So
okay.
I missed that.
But they thought maybe they were just speculating it might have been an Easter egg, but who knows?
Possibly.
That could be. Yeah, I mean that is one thing about these shows is that, and I mean with the MCU in general, it seems like they have a tendency to remix a lot of stuff from the comics.
Yeah.
Where instead of like actually portraying a character, they will do something like just name someone something that's in the comics and just kind of toss Easter eggs in there without like really kind of going all the way with it.
Which is fun until they need to actually incorporate the thing later, and they have to kind of retcon what they did before, which has happened.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah.
So then he goes home.
Are we to the Alps yet or no?
Yeah,
I think we're just about there. I just wrote a question at this point in viewing, like, as the viewer, I'm not clear on this transformation and how it takes place, and with so presumably here, if I'm watching this the first time I watched it, I'm like, well, something happens and he changes from Steven to Mark, and I have a question here. Is Mark Moon Knight? Is that a different thing? Are there 3 personalities here? Is there 2 personalities here? I don't know the answer to that question necessarily yet, but is it that when he goes to sleep, the other person comes out? Is that because that seems to be all the stuff he has set up in the bedroom? But then as the episode goes on, it's like, nope, he slips in and out of these 2 characters seemingly at random times as well, or when needed at the end of the episode. So I don't know
I think it's a matter of him losing control of his consciousness. Like, obviously, when he goes to, because I mean, so the next scene after he's talking to the statue is he does go home and he's actively trying to stay awake all night.
Oh, that's right.
That's right.
We see him, he's like he's listening to like a recording about staying up, and he's doing puzzles and trying to read and do all these things, and it doesn't work. And
I really like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It's such a cliche to have like a smart character solve a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
And he does not solve the Rubik's Cube. he's just flipping it around.
Yeah, he's laying there like doing it one-handed.
Just hanging
he's
out.
Just gonna solve it right away.
I totally thought that by the end of it he was gonna like just have solved it, but nope, it's just still jumbled. I don't know if that was intentionally funny or I got a kick out.
No, that was I enjoyed that too. But then we get this like smash cut to he's laying in like a grassy field and it looks like his jaw's dislocated.
Yeah, gruesome.
And, that was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So I mean, to go back to your question, Cody, I mean, maybe I'm assuming that that's something that will be established as the show goes on. I kind of just took it as, as for the most part, at least when he's awake as Steven, he is able to maintain control of that personality. And I mean, I think over the course of, what happens after he wakes up in this green field, maybe it's like a trauma response that he kind of loses control of himself and switches back and forth.
The best way I can try to describe it without spoiling anything is that it's a power struggle. That's really kind of the most I can say. And you're kind of onto something there with it. It's situational, like what might tip the scales towards one personality versus the other, but I don't really want to say a whole lot more than that.
Yeah,
I guess that would make sense just from like when Steven goes to sleep, then like he's relinquishing control, I guess.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would make sense on both sides.
Especially confusing for me was that voice that is like a third personality in the mix. I know it was given a name later in the episode.
My kids
I
were.
don't know if
Fashnak
that
or
was-
something.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't actually hear them give it a name.
I don't
know what it
remember them
is.
giving it
Or
a
maybe it
name
was in the
either.
subtitles. Maybe it was in the captions.
Oh, it might have
been.
that I got a name. But as a viewer who doesn't know the lore, I was a little confused by that.
I mean, again, I'm not familiar with the character. I didn't really find that all that like, I just, for some reason, naturally, and maybe it's because it is a different voice, like I naturally took it as being an external force of some sort and not like another personality within him.
I couldn't tell if
I
it
could
was
be
like
wrong, but
something really powerful or if it was like, in Spider-Man, Ned's like the guy in the chair. Like
Yeah.
it seemed like it could totally be like
Well,
a guy in
so,
a chair
I mean,
somewhere helping out Moon Knight.
to that point, like
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to mention, which I wasn't sure where I was going to bring this up, but so it's F. Murray Abraham doing that voice, which
Oh,
really?
is like an amazing actor.
Mhm.
The thing that bothered me about it is the fact that he spoke in like modern parlance. Like he, used contractions and kept calling him like, oh, the idiot's in charge and things like that, where that kind of threw me off, especially at first. I feel like if it was supposed to be this like Egyptian deity in his head, which, spoiler alert, I believe it is, it would have, at least at first, I feel like it would have been more effective to me if he had spoken in a more kind of like stately way.
Well, and then
Yeah.
he's even, like is the narration voice is going over top too. Like he's also talking to someone else. So is he talking to Mark while he's talking to Steven? Because there's times when he'll say like, look at this idiot, or like weird. He'll like make different comments about like another entity in there as well. So I don't know if he can talk to like half of Steven's brain while Steven's.
I guess I didn't even, I mean, I just kind of took that as he's kind of like talking to himself / narrating what's happening.
And there was definitely one or two parts where he was like directly addressing someone else, though that was not Steven.
Justin, is this like all these answers and you're not saying, or you're not, or it's not?
I know a lot of the answers, but a lot of those answers are spoilerish, so I'm kind of
yeah.
Now you're doing a good job of not spoiling.
I agree. I was just curious.
Yeah.
My kids instantly were like, "Oh, this is like Venom."
I can see the comparison.
And I was like, "Yep, makes sense." Like, got the voice that's kind of doing the comedy bit over top what's happening.
Yeah, I will say it's not outside the realm of possibilities that there might be even more personalities in there somewhere, because the precedent has been set in some runs of the comics. So, and it's also kind of where the waters get muddied sometimes with the storytelling, because it's a lot to juggle. But we'll see how many they decide to incorporate, because I've seen some of the like the promo art that leads me to believe there's at least one other one in there.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we'll see though.
All right, so he wakes up with the smashed jaw and immediately waves up to the guy in the tower.
Hey guys. Yeah, and the guy kind of tentatively waves back, and then they start shooting at him.
Yes.
I thought that was pretty fun.
So he runs from being shot at, and he finds himself in a village, and he kind of tries to blend in. He sees all the villagers kind of walking in the same direction, so he like puts his hood up and kind of follows them.
Getting some Resident Evil 4 vibes in that.
Yeah,
scene.
I thought that too, actually. It looks like this kind of idyllic village. I think they say eventually that it was in the Alps. But yeah, you get the sense that there's something cult-like or like weird going on here, and then we follow them and they go to this like town square area, and we see our old buddy Ethan Hawke show up again.
So are we to understand that this is where he's like headquartered?
That was how I took it.
And so that's why he kind of has sway over the people there. That was kind of how I took it. That's kind of like his base, and those are like, it seems like there's almost like a cult.
Followers.
Some kind of following around him.
Could have just been Florida though.
It's true.
But there.
So he asked for a volunteer, or like asked who wants to go first or something, and a guy from the crowd volunteers and comes forth, and I believe he says like, "You're so brave."
Mhm.
Yep.
And we see him do this judgment ritual. He
Yep.
has this cane that I believe has like crocodile heads on either side.
Mhm.
And he like puts that between like him and the guy's arms. And then we see he has this tattoo on it. Ethan Hawke has a tattoo on his arm, which is scales, which also have crocodile heads on them. Which, spoiler alert, is like the symbol of Amit, which we'll get to later. But we see like he's like swinging this cane back and forth, and we see his tattoo, the scales of his tattoo actually moving as it's judging this guy.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, what did you guys think when this was happening?
I thought it was really unique because I mean, in Marvel shows, we're used to, you know, people shooting beams out of their hands and flying and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting kind of occult, you know, slant to give to a Marvel show, and I really enjoyed that they were doing something different.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it definitely felt different. And I mean, I thought just the visualization of, you know, the way the tattoo moves, I thought was really cool.
I think they borrowed that from another Disney property, Moana. So
You're welcome.
yeah, you should have said that in the middle of the scene.
I love that movie.
I thought it was a cool way to show that like it's real in the sense that like it's not something that he's just making up.
That's a good point too. Yeah, they established that like right up front here.
And again, with the glass before, if not for the glass before, I would be wondering, is this like a scam? The tattoo's moving, he's doing this glass stuff that nobody else even seems to like know about. So he really believes in it, and it really seems to be a true force at work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
especially with the next
agreed. So so he judges this guy, and he judges him to be a good man.
Good man.
And he asks who's next, and this older woman comes forward and says, like, please, I must know.
I have to know. Yeah.
So he does the same thing with her, and it doesn't go so well. I forget exactly what he said. Well, so I believe when he first kind of came in front of the crowd, he said something about how it feels like heaven there, and like it's not heaven, but they're trying to make it as much like heaven as possible or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then after he judges this woman, he says something about how like she's bad, and you know it's too bad that she won't live to see the world that they'll make or something.
Mm-hmm. And she says, well, I've been good my entire life. And he says something along the lines of, well, Amit sees all, perhaps it's something that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. So it's like hugely important, I feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he's a precog.
Yes.
A little Minority Report reference for the people at home. But yeah, so apparently Amit, who is the deity that he at least thinks he's working for, sees something evil in this woman. And did she just like die? Like she just like falls and dies? Like,
she just like all the life just leaves her.
Yeah, it's really, I like the way they framed it, because you never get a real sustained shot of her, but she does look desiccated. Like, you know, just everything got drained out of her.
Wicked Witch of the West did.
Yeah. So you only see it in little, you know, little brief clips as she's being like carried away, and I thought that was very well shot.
Yeah.
And Arthur, our villain, doesn't seem to take any pleasure from it.
No,
he seems genuinely, you know, a little sad that just happened, which I thought was a good indicator of his character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a way, it makes him more chilling, because I mean, he could just be up there, like, you know, grandstanding and being like, see, this is what happens when you go against the will of Amit or whatever. But instead, he's just resigned almost. It's an interesting take on a villain.
Yeah, I mean, that makes him a lot more compelling. I mean, that, and just, you know, as we talked about before, the fact that it does seem like he is just convicted and like believes what he's doing.
Yeah.
You know, like he doesn't necessarily seem like an evil person. He's definitely not the mustache twirling villain. So yeah, I mean, it could just kind of makes you more intrigued to see what he's up to, why he is doing this. Mm-hmm. But then I think at this point, the guys that were shooting at Steven come running up and say that there was a problem with the transfer,
yeah.
which I'm assuming relates to the scarab.
Yeah, some sort of deal gone sour.
And so, he asks, like, is he still here? And then he seems to recognize Steven in the crowd.
Well, he says some
Yeah.
command. Everyone
Oh,
bows
yeah,
except
I forgot
Steven
about
goes,
that. Yeah.
oh,
He's
bollocks.
like, oh, bollocks.
Yeah, oh, bollocks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then
Those
he,
are really good.
yeah. Well, so he stands out, but then he does seem to recognize him, and he refers to him as a mercenary,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which I think that's the first time we kind of hear that in reference to Steven/Mark.
Mhm.
And then they have this exchange about, Steven swears that he has no idea what's going on, and
He's trying to give him the scarab, but can't.
yeah, Ethan Hawke
Yeah.
says, well, if that's true, just give me the scarab in your pocket. And yeah, he like literally tries, but like physically can't.
That was
Yes.
a pretty fun scene.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
was
thought so too.
really cool. And then
I don't know why they didn't just like shoot him there and then, but that's
Yeah.
neither
I
here nor
wondered
there.
that too. We start to hear F. Murray Abraham's voice in his head again. I think that's when he starts saying like that he needs to give up control or something like that.
Mhm.
And then the guards kind of close in, and it looks like there's going to be a confrontation, and we just cut away again and cut back to Steven with literal blood on his hands.
And a pile of
and
unconscious
a
bodies
whole
around him.
pile of like dead, bloody bodies, which
Yeah.
This is a great way to do an action sequence without needing any kind of budget.
Yeah.
You just
well, I said before, like I said at the beginning that like, it seemed like kind of a dark, strange way to start a Marvel show, but like starting with this scene, it kind of hammered home. I feel like this might be the most adult Marvel show. Like people get straight up murdered. Like there are bloody bodies that our ostensible hero, we can infer, killed these people.
Yeah.
Like it just feels like kind of a dark turn.
Yeah, that's fair.
For a Disney Marvel show.
Yeah. I mean, I like it, but
yeah, no, I mean, it definitely worked for me. Like I thought, I'm not complaining, but it seemed a little bit more mature than maybe what we're used to with these shows.
Yeah, that's fair. So are we gonna get to the truck?
Yeah, so that happens, and then Steven comes back and is like, I think he apologizes because he doesn't know what really just happened.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So he has to get away, and he hijacks this bakery truck with some delicious looking cupcakes in it. And this car chase ensues, and this is probably my favorite sequence in the episode.
It was great. Yeah, so he's hauling ass, down this twisty road in the Alps, being chased by these guys shooting at him, and fading in and out of consciousness as he's driving, and then presumably Mark is taking control, and then he's back, and it was a lot going on, but I thought it was presented pretty well. Like at one point he comes back into consciousness, and the truck is facing the other way, and he's driving backwards. It's yeah,
it's great. I mean, again, though, like there's
he
a
throws
point,
the gun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, before that, though, I mean, there's a point where there's a guy in the back of his truck, and like he blacks out and comes back, and he's holding the gun, and the guy is in the back of the truck with a bullet hole in his head.
Yeah.
Like he just shot this guy. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, then at one point he blacks out again, like you guys said, and the truck goes the wrong way, and he throws the gun, and we hear the voice say, "Did he just throw the gun?" It's just a fun sequence.
It's like all Disney's way to just like be able to show this episode. It sounds like you've all just described like 3 different scenes where someone dies off camera. It's like,
yeah,
what's the rating for a show if you never see someone actually die?
I mean, I'm sure it saved him some money.
Don't know.
Not having to
Probably.
film all that stuff too.
Yeah.
Or are we going to see all that stuff in a later episode?
Well, that's a good
Maybe.
question too. Yeah, that's entirely possible. Maybe it's not what it seems.
Yeah, if we start seeing things from Mark's perspective, maybe we'll actually see that side of things. I don't know.
So
then he, in the middle of this car chase, he blacks out again and wakes up back in his apartment and notices that Gus now has 2 fins magically. And,
yeah.
What did you guys think about that?
Well, This is one I don't have a definitive answer to. I have speculations, which I feel like I can share without spoiling anything.
Yeah, go for it.
So I have a feeling either it's something connected to this scarab, like maybe this is a demonstration of what it can do, like it can heal things, possibly. I'm not sure. Or maybe in exchange for keeping it safe, this other voice, the deeper one, that isn't Mark and isn't him, maybe it rewarded him somehow with, healing one of his friends. That's less likely, I think, but I think it's tied to the scarab, if I had to take a stab at it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought it was implied that Gus had died and Mark had replaced him, because the woman at the woman at the fish store was like, "Oh, you were here yesterday" or something.
No, see, but
she does say,
"You're right." You're right.
And then Steven's like, "You're not Gus," he says to the fish later.
Yeah, that's what I took it as. Mark just bought a new fish.
I was honestly torn between those two because I could see it kind of either way. I guess I didn't really think the Mark replacing it thing through, because the woman says, when you're as I told you when you were here yesterday, we don't sell, and like I kind of took that as like Mark had been there yesterday with the same complaint, but not. It makes more sense that Mark was there yesterday looking for a one-fin fish to replace it with.
Yeah, that does make sense. I hadn't considered that either.
So did the fish die just because Mark was gone for a couple of days? And
that could be.
I think so.
Like, you don't need to. If you don't feed a fish for a couple days, it's not going to die.
Yeah, well, he may have been gone for longer than he thought.
I mean, it's like a dollar goldfish.
Well,
Those things could die for any reason.
We know he's gone for 2 days.
Yeah, he was gone at least from Friday and Saturday. Yeah.
Or he could have been, well, it would have been like,
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Thursday through Sunday.
There was a missing 2 days, we find out in a scene.
Yeah. Well, so that's, the goldfish thing, I don't think matters that much. But then while he's at the pet store, he notices the clock and that he has this date coming up with the, woman from the museum. So we see he gets dressed in a hurry and goes to the fancy steak place, and he's sitting there and has a sad time by himself. And while he's there, he learns that, he calls the woman and she says, she had a great steak dinner by herself 2 nights ago. So that's when he realizes that he has been out of it for 2 nights. And then he orders a sad steak and doesn't know how to order steak because he's a vegan
and gets it well done.
I think that waiter is the biggest villain in this whole story.
I know. He just gives him a well done steak.
To be like, how do you want it? Oh, you don't have an answer? We're going with well done then.
Well, he said
very well.
He says very good. Yeah, he's like, oh, very good. Yes. Like, so he probably, by very good, he's saying well done. I mean, he obviously doesn't know anything about steak, so he's not going to know anything anyway.
Yeah, that's the only way I would eat a steak. So there's that.
If I'm that chef, we're like 5 minutes till closing. Another ticket comes in, and it's for a well done filet mignon. I'm burning the place down. That's
I mean, I also take issue with the fact that the waiter says that the center cut filet is the best cut of steak, but
and if that's the best cut they have, it's not that great of a steakhouse. So
it's supposed to be the best, but it's supposed to be the best steakhouse anyway. Steak dog.
If he picked it out though, Steven at least is vegan, so he might have just been going with like what he thought was. Yeah. So that's what I like about the way they're presenting this narrative. There are so many options for interpretation of these little details.
So far,
yeah.
So he goes back to his apartment and he has a box of chocolates that he was presumably going to give to his date.
And flowers.
After his second voicemail to his mother again, though.
Voicemail on his way home.
Mm-hmm.
Also, to go back a second, the terrible CGI in this episode was during your log truck scene you all seem enamored with. So let's go back to that for 1 second.
I agree. All right. That had left something to be desired for sure.
Yeah.
As you were.
It didn't really bother me, if I'm being honest. But
I mean, it was notably CG, but I was able to roll with it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much like
so he leaves a voicemail on his way home and lies and says that everything went well and she loved the flowers as he's throwing them in the garbage.
Yeah.
And then he
then it gets weird.
Eats some sad chocolates.
Weirder than it has.
Here's some sprinkles with not Gus.
Mm-hmm.
Gus 2.
And
Poor Gus, too.
he accidentally drops some of the chocolates on the floor, and while he's picking them up, he notices these like skid marks on the floor by his table.
Phrasing.
I know. Also in his underpants. So he kind of puts together that it looks like the table's been dragged across the floor, and he moves the table and sees this like loose board up on the wall that might be hiding something.
Mm-hmm.
And he removes it, and behind that panel he finds a cell phone and a key of some sort.
Mm-hmm. It's like a crappy little flip phone, like a burner.
Yeah, it's like it's an old flip phone.
I have two gripes about this. Number one, that apartment is huge for a gift shop worker in London. Like, he must have a trust fund or something. And all right, fine.
I could answer that, but
Mark is, we think, a mercenary, so all right, that makes sense. But Steven should be questioning that, I guess. And then the other thing is, like, a second later, he's going through the phone, and the phone rings, and the ringer is on. And if that thing was up in like that high wall, he would have heard that every time it rang.
I actually have an answer for that.
Please.
He has the phone plugged in, so presumably it was dead and he's recharged it. If you pay attention during that scene, you can see a cord coming out of the phone.
Oh.
So presumably he had to recharge it.
Interesting.
So there, Dave.
I don't know. It wouldn't have, if it was dead, it wouldn't have recorded all those missed calls, though.
Well,
so,
that's not true. Well,
it wouldn't have recorded voicemails, maybe, but
that is true. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, or I mean, maybe after he recharged it, he turned the ringer on while he was playing with it.
All right.
Anyway, he recharges the phone, and he's looking through all the call log, and there's a ton of missed calls from someone named Layla.
And one from Eric Clapton.
Also, one missed call from someone named Duchamp.
Mm-hmm.
And while he's it looks like he's maybe thinking about doing something with it, a call rings in from Layla. And she's kind of chewing him out because she's been trying to reach him for months, and he's been ignoring her. And
she keeps calling him Mark.
She keeps calling him Mark, and she asks him what's up with this ridiculous accent.
Terrible accent you're doing.
Yes.
And then I don't remember. I think she just hangs up on him at some point.
Yeah, he keeps asking questions, and the line goes dead.
So that's about that.
And that's when things really fall apart.
So do we want to speculate now? Justin, you might know, so maybe you don't speculate, but
okay, sure.
Who do we think Layla is?
Black Widow's second sister.
I mean, do we think it's like maybe like Mark's girlfriend or a like professional partner, or
I was thinking like somebody to do with whatever his official job is, I guess.
Handler maybe or something.
Yeah, somebody.
But she says she hasn't spoken to him in months and thought that he might be dead. But if he's in Germany or wherever, making deals, you would think that if that was his handler, that she'd be in on that. And
well, if he's a mercenary and if she's involved in that, you'd think they'd be able to find him.
Right.
So that is interesting.
So I don't know.
Maybe he's under a double operation, like she's his normal work partner, and this is like a further mission that he's on.
I kind of took it as Layla is maybe like more of a personal connection, and Duchamp is maybe like a handler or like someone from the mercenary side of things. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. She sounded.
We'll find out.
She sounded professional on the phone, but that could have just been.
But she sounded like really concerned, though. It wasn't really like fuck you. Like it sounded like she was actually kind of invested in whatever relationship she has with him.
Yeah, a more personal connection versus just you missed our last two our two hits. What is going on? That's what.
Yeah, I would lean on the side of personal.
It must be wife then, right?
Maybe
girlfriend would have left a long time ago if that's the case.
That's true.
Yeah, one missed steak dinner and then gone.
Exactly. You see how things are. Cutthroat in London.
So then he hears a new voice in his head, and it tells him, Steven, you need to stop you're gonna get yourself in trouble. So it's like warning him about something. The voice sounds an awful lot like Oscar Isaac not doing a terrible British accent. So I think we could assume that this is Mark talking to him now.
Mm-hmm. Quite possibly, yeah.
So he's freaking out, and he like goes to the bathroom, which I don't know if he thinks that there's someone in there at first, and like that's why he goes in there. Yep. But then he's looking in the mirror, and at first he seems like he's going to kind of just back away, but then the reflection in the mirror moves of its own accord. It's like it shakes its head at him. So what did you guys make of this?
I really like what they did with reflections and shadows and stuff in this to try and metaphorically depict the other personalities and all that. I thought it was, I mean, it's a little cliche that, if you're freaking out, you see a reflection in the mirror that's not what's actually there. But I thought they implemented it well. Sometimes things are cliches because they work. So.
Yeah, I thought it was the beginning of these kind of creepier scenes that happen towards the last third of the episode here. But yeah, really well done. Good first impression. Again, I think as the viewer maybe raises some questions as far as how Mark and Steven can see each other, or how Mark can project himself to Steven in like his visual range, as opposed to like a voice in his head, as opposed to the whole Moon Knight aspect of the whole thing.
I mean, if it's in his head, I mean, I think we can assume that whatever he is seeing is not necessarily happening external to himself. It's just like they're showing us what he sees, like it's.
Yeah, I guess at this point that's all we have to go on, because a lot of these scenes are very solitary with him in this first episode. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll have to see where that goes.
So, I mean, you said like stuff starts to get weird, and I mean, from here, stuff does start to get really weird.
Yeah, best scene in the episode's next.
Is that true?
My favorite scene of the whole episode.
Walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, it was just the 30-second clip of the presumably different creature. Like it wasn't Moon Knight, but there was something walking down the hallway.
Actually,
in the shadows.
That was a solo old lady visiting her neighbor on the fifth floor.
Let's take a step way back, because we did mention this before.
Mm-hmm.
After he wakes up in the Alps initially and starts to hear that voice, there is a quick shot where we see this figure standing behind him.
That's true.
Yeah,
and it kind of looks like, it reminded me of like kind of a mummy with like a staff kind of.
It's like a mummy. It's like a mummy mixed with like a plague doctor or like a bird or something.
I think it's when he first starts hearing that voice, the F. Murray Abraham voice.
I'll have to rewatch
it. But it literally lasts probably a second or less. It's like you just quickly see this figure like come up behind him, and then it's gone.
Oh yeah, it was when he wakes up and then he turns and sees the castle with the guy waving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
oh really?
Yeah. So they kind of plant that there. So anyway, back to his apartment. Shit's going weird. Don't like the lights are kind of flickering. Like it starts.
Yeah.
You get the sense like it's kind of diving into his paranoia to an extent. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure how much of this is real or how much is just him kind of freaking out. But he is kind of like, it seems like he's running from something. He gets on the elevator, and then Dave, I think you mentioned the little old lady.
Yeah.
Like she gets on, and he's like in the corner freaking out. And he lies and says he's looking for his contacts.
And she's like, "Oh, I hope you find it."
Yeah, she's like, weirded out.
Buttons.
Like they end up on the 5th floor, and she's like knocking on this door, and she's like, "I'm just going to visit my friend. She's home.
She's expecting me."
Yeah, she's expecting me. Like,
the second time I watched this, it definitely got like. So, are you saying that he was imagining what he saw coming down the hallway, and it actually was the lady the whole time?
I don't think so.
The second time I watched it, I got more of that impression. But the first time I watched it, it was definitely more like whatever the creature was, kind of like took the form of the lady, because you see like the hand reached in the elevator, and then it's the lady's hand, and she walks into the elevator at the last second.
I kind of take both as being true. Like I think he did actually see the creature, but I don't think it was like the creature taking the form of the old lady. I think it was just kind of a weird coincidence thing.
Yeah, I agree. Although he went down to the third floor, right? And that's when.
Yeah, it goes like 5 to 2, I think.
If it was a
and-
little old lady, why would she, visiting her friend? Why would she get on the third floor? But I agree with you, Joe. In general, I think it's meant to be like ambiguous and confusing.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was taking the form of the lady. I think the lady was real and just
It's the first time I watched it, I was like, this is
he's all
just
messed
M.
up.
Night Shyamalan's Devil. That's all this is.
But yeah, so he does. I mean, so it is. He sees this figure. It's presumably it's the same figure that we saw the brief flash of back in the Alps, except here we kind of see it more in full. It has its head looks kind of like a bird skull.
Yeah.
And it's got this, it's like all white. Its body looks like kind of robes. And it kind of does remind me of like a mummy.
Yeah.
So it's pretty creepy. Like, honestly, like I felt like that whole sequence was pretty kind of claustrophobic and pretty creepy.
And even when he wakes up and he's on the bus, the thing's still like out on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So that's
again and then gone.
Yeah, we kind of smash cut, and then he wakes up the next day, and like suddenly it's bright out, it's morning, and he's on the bus, and he sees this same thing, just like Dave said, standing on the sidewalk. Did we want to talk any more about that, or did we want to just keep?
I don't think I noticed the sidewalk part actually.
Oh, really?
It was another blink and you miss it kind of thing.
Yeah. So he's taking the bus to work, and when he gets off, he looks back and notices that Ethan Hawke is on the bus, and he says he's real, or like, oh my God, he's real, or something like that. So he wasn't sure if he was just dreaming the whole sequence in the Alps or what.
Yeah, so this is his first. Go on, sorry.
No, you go, Justin.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say this is his first tangible proof that I'm not just hallucinating all this. It's not just all bad dreams and sleepwalking. Something is about to go down. This is more than I bargained for. Yeah. Which I thought was a nice, nice reveal, because you realize he's in way over his head, like completely over his head.
I better use my rapport with the security guard at the museum
in
order to get some backup in this situation.
What is it? What is the security guard keeps calling him? Scotty.
Scotty.
Yeah.
Scotty doesn't know.
You're watching otter videos again,
yeah,
aren't
the guy
you?
just loves otter videos. I love that. I've been that guy. Yeah, he talks to the security guard who he thinks he like has this rapport with, and he's like, could you, I'm being followed. Could you just make sure, don't let anybody in here? The guy's like, it's a museum, it's a public museum. Anyone can come in here for free. It's like, well, just try to keep anyone dodgy out. Like, what?
So there is. I'm not gonna. I don't want to say too much, but there might be significance to the otter videos. That's all I'm gonna say.
What? Really?
Does he have a personality that's an otter?
No, I will say that's not the case.
Wow.
But
is that tied to his Grindr profile?
Everything is part of something here, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of a reach, and it's an obscure like Egyptian mythological reference, but it is potentially a thing if they actually want to go through with it.
I'll tell you what's a reach. Let's go to the next scene, shall we?
Oh boy.
Okay.
Well, so I've watched this 3 times, and I never noticed this guy, but he sees a guy walking who he says was on the bus. And so he starts kind of following that guy.
Yeah, if he's like watching out for danger, why would he go towards the guy he saw on the bus?
I mean, he's not really a smart guy. I think we can say that.
He might think he's got a better chance of being safe if he can keep an eye on him.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just trying to figure out what's going on.
That too.
But so he follows this guy towards the back of the kind of main hall, and Ethan Hawke shows up. And he turns around and sees this other security guy who he thinks he's friends with. And other security man reveals that he has the tattoo.
I love that. I don't remember the security guard's name, but he was like, "Oh,
I think it's
Douglas,
Ronnie.
Ronnie, you too!"
Really?
Like, he couldn't believe it.
Oh, he's so disappointed.
I expected better out of you.
But I mean, to me, like that obviously we had seen all the people in the village, but like when the security guy's in on it, that gives a sense of the possible scope of whatever Ethan Hawke's up to.
Yeah.
That there are
Mhm.
potentially these like cult members or followers just kind of hidden everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I mean, maybe, but
maybe,
why were they all watching him at his job for presumably a lengthy period of time?
well, he didn't have the scarab, I believe, until I'm
Thursday?
assuming he got the scarab in
Right.
the Alps because they said something about the transfer didn't go well.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel like that adds points to my side of the argument, though,
Maybe
not the other
maybe
side.
it's less about
So
Stephen and more about the Egyptian exhibit.
Yeah, I mean that's
Possibly.
probably true.
they've all infiltrated long-term work positions at this museum to watch the Egyptian exhibit.
To protect Amit's artifacts. I have no idea.
There is also
I'm
the
reaching.
possibility this is all in his head.
At least that's something.
That is possible too. I mean,
Which-
well, Dave makes a good point, which is that we don't necessarily know where this is going in terms
Mhm.
of what artifacts are at the museum that might come into play in all this.
There is that.
But I mean, Justin also makes a good point, which is that we really don't know if any of this is actually happening or not.
But
Yeah.
then Ethan Hawke says, "So you really do work here?" And I'm like, half the payroll is working for you. Like, how shitty of spies do you have in this place that they didn't know this guy works there every day?
That's if he has the spies there at all, or if because again,
The
I'm going back
security
to the
guards
thing-
were his spies. The long-term
they-
employment
Let
positions
Justin
in this
talk.
museum were
Let Justin
under his
talk.
control.
if they were even there. That's the thing.
Wasn't the dude at the front desk? Didn't he have a tattattoo also?
Did
I don't
he?
think so.
I don't
No.
I
think
thought they
so.
showed him with one. They did not.
Uh-uh.
No,
No,
He
but
just had
the
an
one-
outer
it's just the
tattoo.
one guard, and then the
There's like a
random
second guard that shows up a little
exhibit-
later into the
exhibit goer.
Yeah. So the question is, are they even there? And that's arguable because the precedent certainly exists in the comics for a lot of stuff to simply be happening inside Mark or Steven or whichever personality. A lot of stuff just happens inside his head. And honestly, I think those are some of the worst runs of the comics because
Yeah.
if nothing, well, I'm not going to spoil too much, but there are a couple of runs where for a good chunk of them, it's never clear if anything is actually happening or if he's just like locked in a padded cell somewhere.
Oh boy.
And
You can take unreliable narrator too far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think for the sake of this show,
Mhm.
I mean, I hope they don't do that.
Same.
I mean, I got the sense that the only thing that's really only in his head are the multiple personalities.
Hmm.
Like I kind of took it as everything that we actually see going on is actually happening. But
And one of
that's the
the
case.
guards hears and then steps out of the way of the door opening so the kids' tour group can go through. So to me, that would lend that he's probably real a little more.
yeah.
Okay.
But I
And I do
mean, but
hope
it
that
is
they
a fair
are.
point. I mean, like Dave said, Stephen is very much an unreliable point of view character because we know for a fact that he has some mental issues going on.
Mhm.
So we can't really know anything for sure, I feel like.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Ethan Hawke's there, yay. And this is where we kind of start to get more of a sense of what's going on. He asks Stephen if he knows about Amit, or he asks if he knows Amit, and he says, no, I don't know, not personally, or something like that. And he goes on to describe Amit as being an Egyptian deity who got tired of having to wait for people to die before they were judged and decided to be proactive about that whole situation. So apparently, her whole thing was she wanted to judge the living, and going back to the whole precog thing, judging people not just for what they had done, but what they would do in the future of their lives and punishing them accordingly. So
Yeah,
I feel like this is where we're kind of getting a look at what his sort of scheme is.
Mhm.
He says that Amit, if not like imprisoned or punished by the other gods, could have prevented Hitler
Yeah.
and like
The
some other
Armenian
baddies,
genocide.
but doesn't name Thanos, which I thought like
Oh, that is interesting.
Thanos would be the more modern Hitler in the MCU.
I mean, was
universe
Thanos wrong
in terms
though?
of like
Maybe
don't
Amit doesn't think
start,
Thanos
don't
is wrong.
start. But in terms of like being a big bad guy who kills a lot of people,
Yeah.
If anybody would have got
Oh,
his
things
tattoo to
Thanos did.
flicker balanced, it would have been Thanos. So come on.
That's true. Well, and I mean, so we see that. I
That was
mean,
good, that was
he basically forces Stephen to be judged, does the thing with the cane again.
Which we didn't get to see the result of.
Well, no,
Was that-
It didn't
because
stop.
there is no result.
Yeah, it just kept
Yeah.
going.
It
Yeah,
keeps going,
there's
and then he
chaos.
Really?
says,
Yeah.
"There's chaos."
Was
in
that
you.
implied and I just missed it?
There's
or-
chaos in you.
There's
I put that in
chaos
quotes.
in you. He
Yeah,
says.
it just kind of kept bobbling back and
Yeah.
forth. Yeah.
I wish they would have shown that more. I don't know. I was confused by that, but maybe I'm just dumb.
Which I mean, I didn't think about this until now, but the whole "there's chaos in you" thing. Do you think that is just a result of the fact that he has these two different personalities? Like maybe
It's-
Steven is good, Mark is not so good, and so
certainly a
hard to
factor.
And the
Really?
otter is right in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
I
I'd
don't-
say
I
that's
mean, I
certainly a
guess-
factor. Yeah.
So after he is judged, Steven manages to run away after the tour group comes out that you guys mentioned before.
Yes.
He runs into that other hallway and
Hell dog.
Hell Dog. He
Talk about
starts-
Resident Evil 4.
Yeah. He starts hearing what he thinks is a dog. That sounds like it's in distress at first, and he's kind of following the sound, and he gets attacked by this like jackal-like
Jackal hyena type thing.
Egyptian
Yeah.
creature.
The eyes on that thing, just in the
Yeah.
dark when they caught the light, I loved that.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, we can talk about overall thoughts later, but I did really like, this did feel like it kind of leaned into horror in the hallway sequence where everything's going wrong, and then here,
Mhm.
like it did feel kind of a lot more dark and horror-esque than a lot of Marvel stuff, and I like that.
Same.
You
So
got
it says
Arthur.
Jason-
You got Arthur on the loudspeaker who's
Yep.
demanding that he gives him the scarab despite not asking for it when he was just literally holding his hand 5 seconds ago in person.
Steven
Keep going.
of the gift shop, I think he refers
Yes.
to him as. Yeah, he tells him that if he gives him the scarab, he'll be unharmed.
Or I think the words were he won't be torn apart. So
Yeah.
I mean,
just it
nobody
hammers
wants
home the
that.
thread a little bit.
But he instead, Steven like throws his backpack, and the jackal creature attacks it, and he starts running and almost knocks this like vase thing over and catches it, but then the creature finds him anyway, and he runs into a very fancy looking bathroom,
Yeah.
and then he has a conversation with himself.
Or his
So
other
he's in
self.
this bathroom, like surrounded by mirrors, and going back to, the use of mirrors. Justin, you're saying you kind of like the way they handled that in this show.
Mhm.
He does have this sort of conversation with what we can assume is Mark, who is this other version of himself, or, other personality living inside him. And Mark is telling him that he needs to give up control of the body, and, he can save them. And
Yeah, and Mark, Steven doesn't want to believe it. He's like, none of this is real. This isn't happening. You're not real. And meanwhile, the jackal creature is like beating
Yeah,
down the
just
door.
going to
And-
town.
And eventually he relinquishes control. And we see our first glimpse of Moon Knight,
Moon
the
Knight?
character.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome how they handled that reveal, because so we see the moment where he relinquishes control, and we kind of start to see the costume manifest itself, but we don't really see much of it.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
he just like grabs the jackal creature and beats the ever living hell out of it.
Well, first
And-
it breaks down the door and like
Oh,
lunges at
yeah.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you hear all these sounds of a fight inside because we're back out in the hallway at that
Yeah.
point.
The sink flies
And-
out.
Yeah, the sink goes flying out. Yeah, it's
Yep.
great.
Yeah, and then
And then he's
know,
like hunched over it, beating it, and
Yep.
then he stands up, and then we get the first look at the full Moon Knight costume.
yeah, which I
And
think looks
scene.
great.
And
Looked
then,
great, and it
Yeah,
didn't
in
take
the
them until the final episode to show us the costume, which almost
Yes.
every other like Disney Plus.
that's a good point,
series has done.
actually.
Yeah.
But that's the episode.
But like when he's like driving the truck in the Alps, every time he switches to Mark, does the costume come on and then it goes away? Like I don't know how the costume works.
Well, so I mean, that's a good point in that I kind of took, I don't know. I don't want to get into any spoilers inadvertently, but like, I guess I would assume that the costume is related to the scarab because it looks very mummy-like. Like I would just assume that it's related to the Egyptian stuff and tied to the scarab. And if that's the case, I would think that maybe Mark did not have the costume prior to that, but I don't know if that's true. Like, was he just a mercenary or was he Moon Knight this whole time?
I don't know how much you want me to say.
I don't know how much I want you to say either.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
I mean, what do you guys care about potential spoilers or?
I don't care about knowing how the costume works, I guess.
Well, it's so okay. Let's just say potential spoilers for anyone who's listening out there. So maybe tune out if you don't want to hear anything.
Yeah, I will say.
I mean, it's weird anyway because we don't know. Even if Justin knows exactly how stuff works in the comics, we don't necessarily know if that's how it's going to work in the show anyway.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, what do you know about this, Justin?
Okay, so again, this is definitely spoiler territory. So the costume, okay, Mark Spector as a person is not Moon Knight implicitly. So he was just a mercenary for the most part. Things happened, I'm trying to be as spoiler light as possible. Things happened where he gained the powers and the costume of Moon Knight, but he gained it from an outside source.
Those 5 kids with the rings. There, I got my reference in one more time.
So yeah, he acquired that from an outside source, but the process of it kind of shattered his mind. Is really kind of what it boils down to.
Oh,
yeah, I could go more into detail, but I'm sure the show will.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, I think that's good enough.
That
does again, that makes me even more curious to see how things turn out because that throws the timeline into a blender as far as kind of what I was thinking about things.
Okay. But yeah, go on.
I'd love to hear, if you guys have anything else to say about this scene. Don't let me.
No.
Okay.
No.
Pretty straightforward.
I enjoyed the way they put it together, and it was a great reveal.
Yeah.
I both liked and was a little sad that this didn't feel like an MCU movie or an MCU thing in that it didn't really have any like crossover. And so I'm curious if you guys have any predictions over the course of this show, what crossover characters or things from other MCU elements that we'll see in this show. I have some ideas, but I want to hear yours.
I mean, I just want to say that, as I said with our Shang-Chi review, I am glad that it didn't really feel like an MCU thing. Like, I like that they're doing different things and not feeling so beholden to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as speculation for crossovers, I guess I haven't really given that much thought. I think Cody jokingly mentioned Black Widow at some point. And given the whole thing with Mark being a mercenary, I guess I wouldn't be too shocked if we saw like Yelena or, someone tied to that whole thing show up in this. But I really don't have any theories. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that either, but it's also interesting because the MCU itself has gone on so long chronologically now that like, if this is taking place in what year are they in the MCU at this point? Because didn't they get off of us?
We don't even know when this takes place.
With the snap, they got off of us somehow, and so I think they're on like a different real year than we're on. But then coronavirus real, and so I don't know. So I don't know. But if Mark was, so my point being, I guess if Mark was like a mercenary for the last 5 years, then maybe he wouldn't have met Bucky. He wouldn't have met Yelena and the Black Widows. I don't know. So that's a tough question, Dave. I hadn't thought about it yet.
Huh. I'm just gonna pull from what I know of the comics. I know at various points Moon Knight has worked with the Avengers, sometimes against the Avengers, and he's been occasionally part of a few other groups. Like I remember he was part of a group with Doctor Strange and I think Ghost Rider at one point. So I
the Dark Team.
Yeah. I think for this, they're probably just going to focus more on his individual story. Maybe there'll be a reveal of some of the other characters in like the last episode, but I'm not really holding my breath for any, real substantial crossovers before that point.
They could cross over with like the Egyptian mythology. They could have him cross over with Apocalypse. Then Oscar Isaac could play both
Oh
roles.
boy. I did. I mean,
Actually, split personality.
I doubt this means anything, but I did just see an article yesterday that said that Oscar Isaac's Marvel contract is only for this series.
Oh,
Oh,
So
really?
he's not
Oh.
contracted for any future movies or anything, at least at this point.
That's
Oh, man.
interesting.
I mean, that could probably easily change, and I wouldn't read too much into that, but I did think that was interesting.
yeah.
I have
They might-
seen this described as a limited series and not like the first season of a show. But to give my predictions, Joe, you've not seen Eternals, right?
Correct. That, and if you want to count Spider-Man No Way Home as an MCU movie, are the two MCU movies I have not seen.
Okay, then I'll just say this is not giving away anything really. At the end of Eternals, there is a character who is in London
London?
and nightly. So we'll just leave it at that. I
Oh.
think there may be a crossover there. And I also, so before when I was talking about the statue guy being from the
Guardians.
golden skinned race from Guardians of the Galaxy, the Sovereign, I was joking, but you know what? I'm doubling down on it because if you think about in the MCU, the Norse gods are all they're actually aliens from another planet. Well, what if that's true of the Egyptian gods as well? I would think that a gold-skinned race could be, the Egyptian gods worshipped as Egyptian gods. And so I'm sure this is not true, but it would be awesome if I was right and it was true.
I don't know if
you
I
find out
Stargate
that
crossover.
the Sovereign were actually the Egyptian gods.
Interesting.
And,
I
Shut
mean, I do really hope that Statue Man comes back at some point, but I don't know if I am willing to go that far with you.
I mean, it would be a great way to introduce Stargate to the Marvel universe.
there you go.
Oh, man.
There you go.
Oh,
James
man.
Spader's already part of it, so it's perfect.
There you go. We got the Greek gods coming in this year too, right? So
And Kurt Russell. Kurt Russell's in that too, right?
Yeah.
Stargate?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're set.
Wait, what about the Greek gods?
the Greek gods are coming to the MCU this year too in the Thor
In
movie.
what?
The Thor movie.
Oh.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that true?
Hmm.
that is true.
I didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that either.
Well, if
That
they
is
end up
the
working
plot
this into
spoiler.
like some sort of, Battle of the Gods event later on, that would be kind of interesting.
This is just making me want to replay God of War.
All those things.
Anyway.
All right. Any other predictions for this show? And I know I talked about like MCU crossovers,
For
but
this
maybe
show?
we can get into other things we predict will happen in future episodes. And we only know 6 episodes total, right? So
I
5,
think
6.
so, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I predict that Moon Knight is going to fight some people.
But will they show it?
I predict that they will actually start showing Moon Knight fighting people.
I was kind
I
of
mean,
curious about his powers. Speaking of fighting, though, because like the creatures that he was fighting in the restroom seemed to be fairly dangerous, and like I was surprised when they finally showed him fighting, and he was like,
Yeah, we've really only, I mean, we haven't seen him fighting much in general, but yeah, we have only really seen him like, it looks like he can punch really hard.
yeah, it's good, like based
But
on the
we haven't seen
pantheon
any
of the
sort
Marvel
of-
characters,
yeah.
that could be really hard, or that could be like,
He has all of the powers of Sailor Moon.
I've actually on my Facebook feed, I have started to see occasional pieces of Sailor Moon / Moon Knight, like fan art.
I mean,
Crossed
Sailor
over,
Moon
and-
Knight, it just writes itself.
Yeah.
Jeez.
He's fighting
his,
Egyptian gods by moonlight.
To answer a bit of your question about his powers, it really depends on who's writing him. Like I said, in some of the runs, he doesn't really have any powers at all, and he's just either got resources or he's crafty. In some, he's got super strength and resilience, which it seems like is what they're going for here. There's some where he can actually like affect incorporeal things, like he can punch ghosts. So I don't know if they'll go that route, but
Love it.
Okay, can I just say I will pay $1,000 to renew my Disney Plus subscription this year
wow,
if I get to see Moon Knight punch a ghost.
Wow. You heard
wow.
it. Joe's betting $1,000.
It is on record.
wow.
To be
If Moon Knight
clear,
punches the ghost, Joe has to pay us $1,000.
No, I just
Or-
wanna, I just want to put.
Or
a
you
little
have
bit
to
of-
renew as many years as you have to pay a total of $1,000 to Disney.
That's like 5 years at this point.
Yeah, with
You're
inflation
going to show
waves
up on a
going.
report somewhere and be like, this dude subscribed through 2032
wanna
already. I
see-
don't know.
Listen, it doesn't even have to be Moon Knight. I just want to see Oscar Isaac punch a ghost.
Just Oscar Isaac.
What if it's a Force ghost in Star Wars 10?
That doesn't count. Or does
I'd
it?
pay to see him punch the ghost of Jar Jar Binks.
Oh,
Just as definitive evidence that Jar Jar Binks is dead. Yeah, I would pay for that too.
my only hope is that by the end of this series, he regrows his Dune beard, reclaiming his Spice Daddy status.
Hashtag
Anyway,
Spice Daddy.
What are we
Moon
doing for wrap ups today? Are we doing a score on this, or what do we want to do for the wrap up?
I think we can do like an initial
Yeah, we
impression
could,
score.
like,
1 to 10
rate
Z's
it
again.
as a first episode of a Marvel program.
Yeah.
Okay. Who would like to go first? Or should I
Well,
go?
since I know I have the best feel for the character, I'd like to go last just to kind of give you guys a
I'll go
chance to
first.
weigh in.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I'll go first. I loved it. I think this was probably my favorite first episode of any of the Marvel shows. I mean, I might be biased because I do love Oscar Isaac in general, but I thought it set up a lot of intriguing stuff, and I'm very curious to see where it goes. I do like the apparent like occult / supernatural stuff that it introduced. So far it feels like it's extremely my jam. I will give it a 9 out of 10.
It's a high score.
Okay.
I'll go next then. So just kind of closing thoughts on this one here is kind of I mentioned already, but it definitely did not feel like the typical Marvel fare for a lot of reasons that were pointed out already. And at least for this first episode, I appreciated that it didn't have, as far as I could tell, any reference to anything else in the MCU. It was completely a standalone story, which I like that. I like the dissociative identity disorder by its nature, they did a good job of kind of making the viewer feel that with a lot of those quick, rapid cuts from scene to scene, very abrupt, very uneasy, very jolting from one setting to another setting as they were going through. I was kind of curious if it will connect to Dave's question here. Will it connect to other things in the MCU and other characters that may be? I'm not sure. So I was kind of the last question I wrote down was, what's the purpose of the show going to be when all is said and done at the end of the run? Is it just kind of this standalone street story, which is essentially what the Netflix shows were,
Yeah.
which I really liked most of them. We can do
I
that
feel
as
like
another
it
one.
has to connect at some point, but I don't know how it's going to connect, but it has to tie into everything else.
Well,
to
that's
some
why,
extent.
I was kind of curious because I was just looking. I think the live action ones, and I could be wrong on this because it's been a while for some of these, but I wrote down that Hawkeye and Falcon and Winter Soldier didn't really seem to matter in the grand scope of the MCU, and Loki and WandaVision obviously matter quite a bit in the scope of the MCU.
Well, I
So-
mean, Falcon and the Winter Soldier sets up Falcon as Captain America.
Well, yes, but
And I
you
mean,
didn't
And
it's
Hawkeye
necessarily
sets up
need that.
Kate Bishop as the
Yeah.
next Hawkeye.
Yeah,
in my
but that's
opinion.
not like changing the plot of the universe.
Well, no,
you know what
I mean,
it's like
I
a character change from
Yeah.
an updated from an old one.
I mean, if people only watch the movies, like they're not missing much. Like they can just accept that, oh, hey, it's a new Captain America. I agree with that, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I just praised it. Like it's mentioning some of those shows already, but like Eternals was a new style of Marvel movie again. This Multiverse of Madness that's coming up again is supposed to be, last I heard, still is like a horror movie again. So we have kind of this like psychological horror here. We have the Loki with the time travel. WandaVision certainly did something different. Like they're taking different risks with how they're presenting these stories. And that being said, like I did feel like somehow the way this was filmed, it felt like a Marvel property still. So I don't know if they just have a certain style of cinematography they use or what the case is, but I was like, just watching it kind of like reminded me of the rest of the stuff. Plot wise and other elements, certainly it did not. But the last comment here I just had was I didn't really, as much as I liked it, I didn't necessarily feel an emotional connection to many of the characters here. I don't really know exactly what's happening yet. I don't know that I care about Steven at this point yet because he's kind of just a schlub. So hopefully the Moon Knight Mark connection is going to kind of twist all this and making me care a little bit more. So I liked it quite a bit. I bumped it up as we were talking about it here tonight. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I'm going to go a little higher than I had it previously.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. So for me, I think it's an excellent start to a series. I think the series has a lot of potential, and the series could end up for me being like a 9 or 10. In terms of this episode, I thought it was really well done. I thought it was very immersive. I complained about Stephen being too lame, and I do think that's true, but I did definitely sympathize for him and feel like, in the last 5 minutes when everything was really going nuts, I felt bad for him, and I felt like it was very immersive. Like I felt like I was going crazy too, watching it in a good way, in a meaningful way. For me, I think I need a little bit of crossover because I'm just such a big MCU guy. Like I want to know how this links into other things. So it's gonna like lose a point until that comes in, but I'm also glad that they didn't do it in the first episode, I guess. The thing that really gets a knock for me this episode, and I understand why they did it this way, but it kind of like we're missing any action scenes. I know we like allude to the actions, like he blacks out, there's some action, and then he comes back. And it was interesting as the audience to kind of only get the perspective of Stephen. But I also love me some good fight scenes and some MCU action, and it was missing that in this episode. I'm sure there will be, plenty in this to come. So I'm going to give the episode a 7.
Wow.
But I think the series as a whole will improve on that score for me.
Okay. So I am a little biased because I've always liked the character. The concept behind him it's always been one I've really liked. It's just the execution throughout the comics has been very hit or miss over the years. Going into this, I was worried it was going to be one of the misses. I thought, well, he's such an obscure character. They're going to try to do too much, or they're going to take the wrong approach. But so far, I'm happy to say it seems like I was wrong about that. Stuff actually seems to be happening, whereas, like I said, some of the comic runs, a lot of it feels like it's just in his head and nothing actually happens in the real world. Here, it does feel like things are actually occurring. He is in the middle of a plot that's not just him, going nuts. I like the cinematography. I like the art direction of this quite a bit. It wasn't perfect, but I feel so far, at least, it's about as best. It's better than I could have hoped for. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And especially knowing what I know about the character, seeing which elements they'll include, which ones they won't. I'm still not 100% sure. So that uncertainty is also a positive in my eyes, because it keeps me guessing, which is what a show like this is all about. So yeah, very solid opening. Hopefully we do see more action as it goes on, like Dave said. But all in all, I'm very happy. 9 out of 10.
Yay.
Yeah.
I was so hoping Justin was gonna be like, it's shite. 2 out of 10.
Bollocks.
Not good.
Oh, bollocks.
Not good at all. No, it's actually
felt
funny.
like my organs were removed through my nozzle, except the heart.
I can't, Dave, you have kids, so maybe you experienced this at your house, or maybe the other 2 of you with your spouses even. But like when we watch, like we got home from vacation yesterday and I was like, we have to watch Moon Knight tonight because I got to do this for the podcast tomorrow night. Like this is the only night I got to watch it. And I ended up rewatching it today. I had time, but we sit down and Cameron's like, what are we watching? I'm like, Moon Knight. Like doesn't really question it. And then Karen's like, what are we watching? I'm like, Moon Knight. And at this point, she doesn't really question it either. She's just like, what's Moon Knight? Like it's the new Marvel show. It's the next one. But my family, every time we watch anything is always like, tell us a little bit about these characters. Like, what do we need to know going into this, if anything? And the last 1 or 2, now we're getting into like territory of like, I don't know. I'm just like, just sit down and watch it. I don't know. So we usually have been reading like the 1-line summary, but it does. So we talked about this maybe in a smidge earlier episode 2, but Like Marvel is getting to a precarious place now where they're pulling off, people like Moon Knight off their bench to feature in a TV show. And like, you all know, I collect the Funko Pops, and like I keep a spreadsheet of the ones I have and which ones I'm missing. And so just of people that have been made into a Funko Pop, we are at 152 characters by the time the Doctor Strange movie comes out. And that's not counting characters in the movies who have not had one made of them too. So, I mean, the world is so huge and the character list is so diverse at this point. It's going to be really curious to see what happens in the next several years, like how far this train goes on for. I don't feel like they've had to test themselves yet as far as, when they get back to the big movie plot, now that they don't have an Iron Man, they don't have a Captain America, they don't have Thor's presumably going to leave at some point here. Like, can this sustain itself or is this going to collapse at some point? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
I just wonder, are the Funko Pops Marvel or are they all MCU? This doesn't matter, but I just wonder as far as the licensing goes, because Sony owns the rights to like hundreds of Marvel characters.
But only the film rights. They don't own the toy rights at all.
Oh,
okay. But I'm just saying, like, I mean, as far as
to your question, Joe, this is just a list of characters who have been in the MCU, but it does count the Sony films. Yes.
Okay.
The three, Toby, not Tobey Maguire. Sorry, Tom Holland. Well, the last one's Tobey Maguire. Spoiler, Joe.
I mean, anyway, I was wondering.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, promising start.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Anything else for the good of the order, guys?
No. I think we touched on pretty much everything, minus like the end credits, I guess. And there is that bird imagery, bird skull imagery all throughout those, but that'll come into play later. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, I guess for the good of the order, are we going to do the theme song?
Friends occasionally not disagree.
Later, skaters.
After a while, Nile crocodiles. Boom!
Ooh, that's a wrap.